Spider-Man, Spider-Man, radioactive Spider-Man. Throughout superhero history, everyone's favourite web-slinger has remained one of Marvel's most celebrated and recognisable characters. And in such a regard, the mid-90s was no different. In fact, starting in 1994, the Fox Kids network would give us a new, excellent television show which proved popular enough that it would spawn 65 episodes across 6 seasons. This was a great time to be a Spidey fan, with the show's supporting action figure range and other merchandise further cashing in on our friendly neighbourhood hero's success. Shifting gears slightly, if you was a child who watched this show in the 90s, there was a strong likelihood you owned a 16-bit console, likely a Sega Mega Drive or Super Nintendo. So holding such a thought in mind, how bizarre is it that there was a Spider-Man game produced in this era that wasn't sold anywhere outside of Japan? It sounds bonkers when you think about it. So with all this said, hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. Let's discuss the weird history of Spider-Man in Japan and the 16-bit game we were denied. This is the story of the amazing Spider-Man, Lethal Foes. Yeah! The current status of Spider-Man in video games is a relatively high one. Thanks to the 2 games so far from Sony, featuring Peter Parker and Miles Morales, the PlayStation 4 and 5 have an amazing pair of action-adventure titles that completely nail the concept of swinging around an open New York City. Theatrically, the heroes are doing well, with Tom Holland recently teaming up with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in the 3rd movie of his own franchise, and Miles is on his way to star in the 2nd of at least 3 animated works. Also confirmed to be in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is Takuya Yamashiro, the Emissary of Hell. Wait, the Emissary of Hell? Yes, that's right, weird localizations are not just something we get in the West, but over in Japan they get incredibly weird localizations that revise popular characters too, with Spider-Man's Japanese revision being one of the strangest. Long story short, back in 1978, the Toei company would produce a live-action TV series based around the famous Marvel character, which aired on Tokyo 12 for 41 episodes. With this licensing agreement, originally Spider-Man was intended to be identical to his Western depiction, but substantial changes would be implemented to attract a young Japanese audience. This Spider-Man was a motorcycle racer, not a high school student or freelance photographer, and got his powers from an alien from the planet Spider. Fighting monster of the week, Takuya also fulfills the Japanese protagonist stereotype of constantly seeking revenge for the murder of his father, so moralistically deals with his issues very differently to his Western counterpart. Further to this, while he still has the web-slinging skills of Peter Parker, Takuya has something hilarious that Americans might recognise, just not from the Spider-Man source material: his bloody own Megazord. Well, technically not a Megazord, but close enough. Japanese Spider-Man piloted a giant leopard-human hybrid robot. Known as Leopardon, he would fight with it in battle once a week for Japanese schoolchildren. Before we move forward, I just wanted to give a quick thank you to everyone who has subscribed to this channel, who continue to watch each of my videos week in and week out. It can be incredibly hard to get my videos suggested by the YouTube algorithm due to the games I cover being so niche in comparison to what is usually trending on the platform. For this reason, if you're yet to do so, it would really help me out if you hit that subscribe button. I'm eventually looking to cover all the retro Marvel games and would love to share each of these future videos with you. So if you just hit that button for me, Big Daddy Top Hat loves you long time. Anyway, let's get back on track. Rather interestingly, Spider-Man's links to Japan far from ended with him piloting a Megazord. In fact, remember the 90s TV show we mentioned at the beginning of this episode? Well, while that show itself was produced by Marvel Films Animation, what may come as a surprise to you is that the animation for it was handled by Tokyo Movie Shinsha, which raises the question, was this Fox Kids show an anime? Well, I'll leave that for you to debate in the comment section. One thing is for sure though, Spider-Man media continued to be pumped out in Japan, including during the 16-bit era of video games. On the Super Nintendo side of things, the likes of Spider-Man and X-Men in Arcade's Revenge, Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage, and Venom Spider-Man Separation Anxiety, these were all produced in the West and published by Acclaim, sometimes under their LJM branding. It seems that in Japan though, Acclaim didn't have the same stranglehold over the Spider-Man license on Nintendo products, as they did elsewhere, which perhaps explains why the SNES Spider-Man game, not published by them, remained stuck in Japan. Released on March 17th, 1995, The Amazing Spider-Man Lethal Foes would hit Japanese shelves. The game would conceptually be based on a 1993 comic book miniseries known as The Lethal Foes of Spider-Man. These featured the art of Mark Bagley, Carl Kessel and Paul Mounts, all noted American comic book artists. Bagley, born in West Germany but living in Georgia, would later go on to partner with Brian Michael Bendis on the Ultimate Spider-Man series, collectively working together for 111 issues and producing the longest run for a creative team at Marvel Comics. Lethal Foes was largely stylized on the 90s Fox Kids cartoon that drew attention to the hero for a more kid-friendly audience. This source featured many of the villains highlighted in the game: Venom, Dr. Octopus, Mysterio, the Lizard, the Scorpion and Carnage, alongside with lesser seen villains Beetle, characters like Alistair Smythe that never had any particular fans, and the Green Goblin, who was largely sidelined for the Hobgoblin in the series. Given that Spider-Man, if anything, is best when he's part of the merry Marvel Marching Society, characters like the Human Torch, Speedball and Iron Fist appear throughout the game, and J. Jonah Jameson is frequently seen cursing the Wallcrawler, which is fair enough, he is a complete menace to society after all. As for the gameplay, the shoulder L and R buttons are used for swinging through the levels, but you won't be given the opportunity to explore them, thanks to the strict 60-second time limit to make checkpoints. Beyond that, the only bit of gameplay that screams Spider-Man is the always clumsy wall and ceiling crawling and ranged web shooter attack. It doesn't restrict the enemy for a few seconds and simply works like a ranged attack, but it is at least consistent with video game Spider-Man. Players will explore the New York City skyline on the first stage, chasing down the Beetle. After a quick battle, Peter will run into his buddy Johnny Storm, the Human Torch of the Fantastic Four, before exploring the subway and sewer system and facing off against Dr. Connors, his friendly doctor who rapidly transforms into the Lizard. From my personal experience playing this one, from a gameplay standpoint, if you have never tried this one, you are not exactly missing much, as it is essentially nothing more than the most bare-bones side-scroller with a few beat-em-up elements laced in between. Hell, I do not think the first Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game for the platform is particularly of high calibre, but it brings more to the table than this Spidey one. As you progress through this adventure, a term I use rather lightly, the Human Torch will lead Spider-Man out of the sewers and into an underground base, where he'll encounter Mysterio. You know, the fishbowl-headed villain that famously revealed his identity to the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Usually, Mysterio's known for being a chance at more fanciful level design, fully exploring the reality-shifting abilities his power grants. I guess he must have just phoned it in with this one. Defeating Mysterio leads you to the docks to fight Alistair Smythe, the odd shirtless man with shoulder cannons that was way too involved with the animated series for being such a forgettable character. During his cutscene, Speedball of the New Warriors comes by and chats with the Wallcrawler, encouraging him to investigate a corporation. When Spidey asks for his assistance, Speedball says he's got homework. Ah, Speedball. Between instigating the superhero civil war in the comics and bailing on helping Spider-Man in this game, you just completely are the worst character. Spider-Man then proceeds to explore the facility. Twitch has unique teleporters to confuse the player before eventually moving on to face off against Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, complete with this Goblin glider and pumpkin bombs. Back to the city at night, Spidey fights the criminal bonded to a supersuit, Mac Gargan, known as the Scorpion. Once defeated, Iron Fist swings by and directs him to Central Park to fight Venom. He doesn't join because, well, Danny Rand's Iron Fist was the star of the worst Marvel series. Would you expect any better from the supernatural martial arts master? Venom, out of his lethal protector phase and just lethal, is a quick defeat, and Spider-Man decides to leave him to the cops, which sounds like one of the stupidest moves Spider-Man could make. I mean, he is a bloody alien monster that can infect and possess anybody with a touch, for crying out loud. Venom rightly tricks Spider-Man when lying prone on the ground, but a wandering Carnage distracts the pair. Spider-Man then proceeds to the last levels, a mountainous hideout where he eventually finds a surprising fight with Dr. Octopus. Complete with a dapper white suit instead of his green and yellow bodysuit, he uses his arms built out of spheres in one of the more impressive uses of the Super Nintendo's power set in this game. A quick battle with him leads to the villain escaping. Before Spidey can leave the stage and end the game, Carnage returns. Venom conceptually helps defeat the bloodthirsty menace, and by conceptually, I mean he wanders back and forth without any real attempt to fight the serial killer. As video game tropes require, the base, which was located under Manhattan, of course explodes on us, leaving Spider-Man and Venom to escape with the unconscious Carnage in tow. Away from the action in this one, no save features are present, but we do instead get the old-fashioned password system. Passwords of course give you the ability to jump to the level of your choice. There are some cool Easter eggs laced in here, such as passwords which stand out for being key villains' last names, such as Octavius, Brock, Connors and Osborn. Other passwords such as HP up, double your life bar, sounds lets you use the sound test, and max out your lives at 10. These might have been a little harder to deduce for the Japanese audience, but the English speaking world would be surprised to see how obvious they are. Something we have not touched on yet is who exactly published this Spider-Man game, if it wasn't Acclaim. Well, in this game's case, it was Japanese company known as Epoch, who would outsource development to a company known as Agenda. Agenda are also known for a number of budget releases on the PlayStation, so this clearly illustrates that the game from a quality standpoint was never intended to be amongst the cream of the crop. The production of this Spider-Man game was clearly never about a love of the brand, but seemingly looked like a cash grab that presumably chose to take advantage of the island nation not having the same copyright lockdown as America that Spidey had with Acclaim and LJN. So in some ways it could be surmised that it was created under very similar circumstances to all the Western Spider-Man Super Nintendo games. But there is one more feature linked to this game which is also worth a mention. You see, Epoch were an interesting publisher of a Spider-Man game, given their connection goes beyond just attempting to cash in on Marvel in their weaker 90s days. In fact, in Japan, Epoch developed the Barcode Battler, a handheld game console that allowed players to scan in the barcodes of everything from household objects to specially crafted cards. Infamously, it could let you summon the strongest warriors from, say, a can of peaches you had in your cabinet. Epoch would produce specific cards for battle, even branding them with Zelda and Mario in Japan. Based on the success of the original version, Epoch created the Barcode Battler 2 and released it in America, with the Power Rangers being a big get for the brand. Epoch would develop an adapter that would connect the device to the Famicom and Super Famicom, and would make around a dozen games that would connect. Some of them were explicit barcode games, such as Barcode Weld and Barcode Battler Senki, 2 Doraemon games, 2 J-League games, a Donald Duck game, a Lupin the Third game, and of course this Lethal Foes one. A look at the back of the box confirms that the title could be connected to the Barcode Battler 2, but sadly when it comes to 2023, it seems like any idea of what happened when you connected the two and scanned barcodes seems to have been lost to time. Given that the game itself isn't cheap, and the whole setup is incredibly uncommon for someone to have in the English-speaking world, we're left with vague mentions that it allowed additional content to be unlocked. When people explored the connectivity with Donald Duck, they clarified that it was basically a quick way to unlock cheat codes. As J. Jonah Jameson would yell, "Of course Spider-Man's trying to make a quick buck by locking cheat codes behind barcodes. What a scumbag." I mean, given that the barcodes could be found on countless household items, I'm not sure what the scam would be, but old Flat Top would complain nevertheless. If you're looking to play the game nowadays, it has been translated into English, and by most accounts it takes you less than 2 hours to play the visually appealing title. But by all accounts, it effectively is a basic licensed platformer that would have been a weekend rental at best at the time of launch. The novelty of the barcode gimmick enhanced Japanese exclusive Spider-Man game may put it on your list of curiosities to track down, if you're the import adventurous type. But don't go spend a large amount of money on this title. Remember, with great spending power comes great spending responsibility. As requested earlier in the video, please subscribe if you want to see more like this. And before I go, quick shout out to my pal Chad, the ultimate Chad, who helped me write and research for this one. So if you enjoyed this upload, check out our previous upload on Marvel Superheroes War of the Gems. Yeah, cheerio.